Thank you so much for joining us again. It is so great to see you all, Somerset County. You're looking great. Now, we've had a small change in the program. I apologize. There's been a problem in the kitchen. Apparently there's not enough chicken. They want the Greeks to get involved. And I believe that somehow there's a rigged system in the kitchen and somebody hates chicken, believe me. Believe me, it's true, believe me. Well, Randall, I'm so happy that you opened the door to Donald Trump's reality, because his life is a mystery to everyone, and it's being revealed, and it's pretty tragic. I saw some of the news programs today, and they said that some of the things Donald Trump is doing are because he's desperate. Well, I gotta tell you, I have a different take. I don't think he's desperate. I think he's an arsonist. I think his incendiary language, his scorched earth policy, is not designed to help him win or to help any agenda forward. It's designed to make things worse. It's designed to destroy and to make us fearful. This is the worst kind of campaign and the worst kind of leadership. And I know that in a few weeks' time, we're going to send that kind of rhetoric, that kind of divisiveness, back where it came from and seal it in the closet so it never comes out again. Because Hillary Clinton will be the best president we have had, and we can't imagine what a terrible world it would be if Donald Trump somehow gets elected. Now, we can't just rest on our laurels. As Democrats and as people who are committed to this cause, we can't just say New Jersey's going to win, and we can take those electoral votes and believe we've done our job. We have to do more. We have to give Hillary Clinton a mandate. We can't let her go into office and let the opposition think she squeaked out a victory. That's not enough. We have to drive the Senate into Democratic hands, and hopefully the House. Bob Menendez will be a leader of a Democratic Senate, and he will help us. And truly make our country the best and the more perfect union that our forefathers envisioned it to be. Now, because I have to give some kind of a Greek lesson, it's just what I've been doing over these past few years, something came out to me, and it was from Plato, who said that this, and only this, is the root from which a tyrant springs. When he first appears, he will seem as our protector. Donald Trump has created and concocted some fantasy world that we need to alienate immigrants, that we need to send people back, that we need to be afraid of everyone because he alone is capable of protecting us. That's where tyranny begins. We know this historically, from 2,500 years ago to very present times in the modern world. We can't let this happen. And we are fortunate that we have great elected officials and great candidates to make sure that our communities, our state, and our nation are everything that they should be. Now tonight we're honored to have Senator Menendez with us. And I'm even more honored and more proud to let you know that I've had the pleasure of knowing him for over 20 years. And as you, I've admired his professional record. And I know that he is one of the most insightful, most deliberate, most even-handed leaders we have in Washington. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. But I've also known him as a friend. And I've also known him, and I've seen him as a father. And I know that of all the great accomplishments he's had, I know that the greatest accomplishment he feels is from having raised two wonderful children, and soon, a grandchild. When Peg and I took over the reins for Somerset County and tried to drive an agenda forward, Bob Menendez was the first one, 10 years ago almost, Peg.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years. Bob Menendez was the first one to reach out a hand and say, whatever I can do. Well, he has done that, not just for us, but for the nation. His ranking position and high-ranking position on the banking committee, the finance committee, and on foreign relations have really enabled our country to maintain a leadership position that will be severely jeopardized in a Trump world. Senator Menendez is someone who we can rely on. He's not someone who takes his responsibilities lightly. He looks to the issues, he tries to find real solutions, and has the ability in Washington to drive his vision forward. I can't think of one elected official who has done more for the state and more for our nation, and in fact, more for the world, which depends on American leadership, than Senator Bob Menendez. And it is with enormous pride that I welcome him to Somerset County once again.
Good evening, Somerset! Are you ready for a great victory? Are you ready to make some history? Well, Zenon, thank you so much for that gracious introduction. You delivered it just as I wrote it for you, so I appreciate that. That's not true. It's very gracious, and Zenon is a good friend. I'm thrilled to be back here in Somerset. I remember when I was here, when I first had the privilege of being appointed to the United States Senate in 2006, and then run in 2006 successfully, and it was a much more intimate meeting. So, Madam Chair, congratulations on bringing the Somerset County Democrats to full life here. It's easy to be the Democratic chair in Essex or Hudson. It's much more difficult to be in Somerset. So congratulations to you, to Zena, to all of your directors, and all of the men and women who have made an effort and a success on behalf of the lives of those who we get to represent in our distinctive positions. I appreciate all of the elected officials who are here, have been introduced. I'm not going to recognize them all, but I do, by virtue of recognizing my colleague in the United States Congress, want you to know, and through her recognize the rest of all of these elected officials. Let me tell you, I served in the House of Representatives for 14 years before I came to the Senate in the last 11, and I can tell you this: Bonnie Watson-Colvin has shown that she is going to be, in the history of our state and in our country, one of the finest members of the House of Representatives who will etch her mark, not just because she's African American, but because she's a great congresswoman for the people she represents. And when I asked you, are you ready to make history, I know we're all thinking about the presidency, but I think someone who has served this community for 30 years on the police force with distinction would be a great sheriff for Somerset Parish. And I know Doug Singletary for some time, and let me tell you, with his experience in the law and on the municipal council, he can only do good things for the people of Somerset County as its next freehold. Now, as I think about this election, and I have traveled many parts of the country, mostly in support of some of my colleagues who are running in the United States Senate for re-election, others who are running for the Senate, and wherever I've done that, help Hillary where I can. I must tell you that I always think about elections as something about the future. It is about where we, as a party, as a candidate, want to take people. How do we realize their hopes and dreams and aspirations? How do we achieve those goals that Dr. Pinkett was talking about that creates the cynicism because people don't believe so? We are living in a very unique time in which people, you can tell them how we have the greatest stock market of all time, how interest rates are historically low, how GDP is growing for our country, even when other countries in the world are in recession, how we've had the greatest private sector job growth in the last 6 years, lowest unemployment. But they look at me and they say, Senator, that may be all true, but those macroeconomic numbers mean nothing in terms of my life. My income is stagnant. My challenges are growing. My son or daughter are living with me at home when they've already graduated from college. I'm taking care of a loved one, a father or mother or in-law, and my challenges are growing. And my income is stagnant. And you know, I looked at the statistics, and median income for the average middle-class family in New Jersey and across this country is the same as it was in 1999. That's 17 years ago. And that is, in fact, what has tapped this movement that Dr. Pinker was talking about, in which people say, wait a minute, the American dream is I work hard, play by the rules, and if I do that, I get ahead. And yet individuals are working hard, playing by the rules, and not feeling that they are getting ahead, and therefore that dream is not being fulfilled for them. And if the dream is not being fulfilled, then the government must not be doing what it needs to do to make that dream a reality. And so that's the challenge that we've had in these elections. But I think about, as I think about elections being what about tomorrow, I think about what morning in America looks like the day after November 8th. And there are two different visions of what morning in America can look like. And I know where some of the polls are at, but I've been around long enough to understand that, you know, 3 weeks before an election, presidential politics is an eternity. I would never lay down. And I think about, as I travel the country and I say to people, what does morning in America look like if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States? Think about it. A morning in America where the Justice Department is used to imprison your political opponent. That happens in places like Russia and Cuba, but it doesn't happen in the United States of America, and we cannot let that happen. A President Trump who appoints justices to the Supreme Court of the United States, who rolls back the clock to a time and a place none of us want to see, whether it be a woman's right to choose in Roe versus Wade, or whether it be the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act, to a time and place that none of us can accept. But I've seen the justices that he would promote, the 20 or so justices he put out, and I had my legal counsel look, you see, because the Senate does advise and consent for any nominee of the Supreme Court. And when I look at those 20 nominees, I shudder. I shudder. And I know that, for example, women think that it is inviolate a right. I believe it should be inviolate. But you get the wrong Supreme Court, and they are the last voice of what is the law of the land in this country. It is not a risk that we can take. I think of a President Trump who looks at 55 million Hispanics in this country, and who sees us as all that we just crossed the border yesterday, that we are all criminals, rapists, and thieves, and that we are takers and not givers of the society. When in fact, the history of Latinos in this country goes back to before the founding of the nation. If you think about, in Florida, St. Augustine's, Florida just celebrated its 500th anniversary. St. Augustine's was founded by Pedro Aviles de Menendez. True story. Now I'm checking to see if he's a relative, to see if I own any property down there, but the bottom line is, 500 years ago, or Bernardo de Galvez, the governor of Louisiana before Louisiana was a state, who led an all-Spanish contingent against the British when they were marching on Washington during the Revolutionary War, and gave Washington the time necessary to be able to escape that fight. Or you can come and visit me at the Vietnam Memorial and see a disproportionate number of Latino names on that wall compared to the size of the population they were. Or you can talk about Lance Corporal Jose Gutierrez, The first person to die on behalf of the United States in our invasion in Afghanistan in pursuit of bin Laden, a Guatemalan who was not even a United States citizen at the time he died on behalf of this country. Don't tell me about who Latinos are in this country. But that's President Trump. A President Trump that treats American Muslims as less than any other American citizen, saying that they must do certain things that we all should be doing, but that they must do certain things. A President Trump that looks at African Americans and sees only crime and death and ignorance. And when that man at the town hall meeting got up and asked a simple question, can you see yourself as someone who can represent all of America? Something to that effect. The gentleman was an African American, older gentleman, and his response was to talk about crime in the cities. He did not see an American. He saw an African American, and in his mind, a response about how do you ultimately be a president for all the people to talk about crime in the cities. Evidently, he never remembered Randall Pinckney as an example of African Americans, or Bonnie Watson Coleman as an example of African Americans, or so many others like Myra Angelou or Oprah Winfrey, and I can go down the list. A President Trump who, as Commander-in-Chief, talks down the military, who says he knows more than the generals, who thinks that Putin is a great leader, who says that Kim Il-jong is someone that he can deal with, and who proclaims that Russia will never enter Ukraine, even though I was in the Ukraine as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when an invasion took place. Crimea had been annexed, and they are still in eastern Ukraine. This is the man who would be the commander-in-chief. Truly, this is not the man that we can give the right to send our sons and daughters into harm's way, and the man who can hold the nuclear code, which is one of the most significant challenges that any president of the United States can hold. Now, I know some people look at that and say, that's not going to happen. But I'll tell you, when I was in Ohio and saw the numbers there, and saw people there, and in other parts in the country, in Florida, which looks like it's trending in the right direction, but remember an election several elections ago for president and how close that was. I must tell you that his followers have a sense of zealotry behind him. And so I say this because I think we need to talk to our friends and relatives and business associates across the country and say, think about what this means. And you know, I also look at it and I say to myself, real men don't have to bully other people in order to get satisfaction or feel good. Real men don't have to denigrate women in order to feel strong or powerful. And real men don't allow Billy Bush to ultimately get them into a conversation they don't want to be in anyhow. And real men ultimately don't start to whine before the ball game has even been over and try to discredit the election of the United States of America and what it means to the free world. And I spent my entire life, adult life, in public service. So I don't know a lot about business, but I can tell you this. I'd rather make $1 billion and pay my taxes than lose $1 billion in order not to pay any taxes. I think that's smarter at the end of the day, and I don't think he's so smart. But we have an opportunity for a different morning in America on November 9th. We have an opportunity to have a president who doesn't demean people, but lifts them up. Someone who understands and doesn't question their patriotism because of their race, ethnicity, religious views, but knows that we are truly stronger together when we say and act as these United States of America. We can have a president who looks at African Americans and thinks about their historical challenge, but then sees the incredible contributions and promise of a Randall Pickett, of a Maya Angelou, and yes, of a Barack Obama as President of the United States. A president who understands that the Supreme Court in our country has the last word on what is the law of the land, and that will ensure justices that will ultimately guarantee that a woman's right to choose is preserved, that the right of every citizen to seek their franchise and be able to go to vote without intimidation and without obstacles, without segregation in our schools is a reality, and that's why we need Hillary Clinton appointing justices to the Supreme Court that will probably determine a generation of law, because it will be 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices. I look forward, as someone who passed comprehensive immigration reform in the Senate with a bipartisan group of senators, only to see it languish in the House, to have a president who will help me bring millions out of the darkness into the light and let dreamers dream their dream in a country in which the only flag they've ever pledged allegiance to is of the United States of America, and the only national anthem they've ever sung is the Star-Spangled Banner. And I look forward to putting that bill on her desk and seeing her sign it. I believe that Morning in America can give us a president whose economic plan will exceed that of the former President Clinton. And remember what the economy was under Bill Clinton. We balanced the budget for the first time in a generation, created record surpluses, low unemployment, low inflation, and the greatest peacetime economy in over a generation. And we were 2 years away from being a nation that was debt-free. We can go back to that with presidential leadership of another Clinton in this coming year. And I believe Hillary, as someone who sat next to me on the Senate floor, when she believes in an economy that works for all, that sees the opportunities rising for middle-income families, that sees them being able to realize their hopes and dreams and aspirations. I believe we can have a president in one of the most challenging times in the world. For 24 years in the Congress, I have sat in either the House or on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee looking at our challenges in the world. I have never seen the confluence of challenges that the United States faces as we are facing in this time. From the rise of ISIS to the challenge of the Middle East, to the Sahel in Africa, to the challenges in Iran and beyond, the enormity of our challenges, Russia and Ukraine, the enormity of our challenges is unbelievable. But that's all the more reason why a president who understands firsthand what these challenges are, who understands that diplomacy should be our first effort to try to achieve a lasting result with peace, but that if there has to be strength, we'll know the difference between strength for the purposes of being a bully and strength for the purposes of peace and freedom throughout the world, and who will measure themselves as they send our sons and daughters into harm's way. And that's why Hillary Clinton has prepared herself in a way that I think very few presidents on the world stage have been prepared to lead this country and lead the world. That can be Morning in America with her election. And finally, I believe in a president who ultimately understands that if America is to be great, it has to make sure that every child, regardless of the happenstance of where they were born or the station in life in which they were born into, can ultimately get a world-class education. And if America is going to continue to be the global economic leader in an ever-challenging world, that we cannot have a generation of students that we need their intellect of to be saddled under a mountain of debt to get a college education and help America succeed. And I believe that she will change that. I believe that she will be a president who understands that part of our obligation, all of us who seek public life in whatever level, is to bequeath to the next generation of those we serve a better life, a better country, a better world than we inherited. One in which raging fires don't take place, one in which hurricanes of unmitigated strength don't become the norm, one in which glaciers don't melt into the ocean and rise the tides that take the Jersey Shore and put it 5 feet under, and one who understands that it is an imperative to deal with global warming as a steward of the next generation of America. So, we have 2 mornings in America, and it is up to us which morning we wake up to. I believe that we can wake up to a morning in America in which the President of the United States is going to break the hardest, tallest glass ceiling in the world and show my daughter and my granddaughter that in America, yes, the son of refugees can rise to be a United States Senator and a woman can be President of the United States of these great countries. That's our choice. That's why I'm with her, and I hope that's why you're with her, and that's why you're going to talk to your friends and relatives and those you do business with and those that you purchase with, so that can be the morning in America we all wake up.
Okay, here's what I have to say. Wow. There's a reason he's our senior senator, and there's a reason why we invited him here to Somerset County. Senator, I'm not sure they make them like you anymore. But I want to remind you, you know that intimate gathering we were all referring to before? We actually did that at Trump. It was at the Trump golf course. And you came in because we finally got the first ever Democrat elected in Bedminster. Hey, Bedminster, you here? And Senator Menendez was willing to come in and help us celebrate. But what a story, and what you know, you've gotten a lot better since then. Or maybe just got a bigger audience.